Is there anyone there? Is there anyone there? I can't hear you, but I think I can smell you. Do you have any messages for us? It's no good. I won't be able to do this. When you've finished in the kitchen, dear, I'm going to need you at the typewriter again. I've got a letter to write. Oh, and do give Ben his dinner before you come down. You know how he whines for his winner lot. Dear Noel, my dearest Noel, I've been trying to get this new portrait of you finished today, but I've been struggling with it, and I can only put this down to bad conscience on my part. I know you've been waiting to hear from me, and I was going to telephone, but I thought a letter would be better. You'll have to forgive the typewriting, dear, but you know how appalling my handwriting is. And anyway, we're expecting Charles, my editor, for dinner this evening, and I've been hard-pressed to get his head ready. He says he's really looking forward to seeing it. Recently, you asked me to make a return to the stage to play Madame Arcati in your new production of Blithe Spirit, even though my last acting job was, well, nigh on 50 years ago. Well, you had no reservations about asking me to do it. I must admit to having some of my own. Of course, I had them when you first asked me to play her in the original production in 1941. That was partly because of the war. You see, so many of its lines are about death, and I thought it would be wrong to do it then with so much real death around us. The same is true of us nowadays, I suppose. So many of our loved ones gone. Our Ivor, and Gertie, and your Duke, and of course, most recently, my dearest Diana. I have enough real ghosts around me nowadays without playing someone who makes a living from conjuring them up. Knowing my luck, I'd probably do that right in the middle of the stage. You know how superstitious I am. I always curtsy to the new moon every month and never look at her for the first time through glass. Can you blame me? If you remember, the run of my play Will Shakespeare was cut short because of a flu epidemic, and The Lion and the Unicorn, which was the best thing I ever wrote, that was cancelled because our unfortunate producer scalded himself to death at home. I even tried to warn Radcliffe Hall that no good would come of her attending all those séances trying to stay in touch with her late lady friend. Nor did it. All those terrible trials and her book being banned. You know, this flat is haunted. I know our friends scoff at the idea, but Olwyn and I know better. Of course, it suits her, because whenever one of my brushes goes missing, or a bust mysteriously moves from its plinth, she blames our phantom friend. I'm not actually afraid of ghosts. I'm afraid of sudden noises, and of heights, and of losing my temper. I'm afraid of the police. I'm also afraid of cows and of being hanged. thing I'm most afraid of today is of upsetting you by declining your offer to return to the stage. But decline I must. I've been trying to summon up her spirit, but she eludes me. Of course, I do realise that then, as now, you created this role to lure me back to the stage. You even included my favourite song as a temptation. I'll be loving you always, with a love that's true, always. When the things you've planned need a helping hand, I will understand. Always, always. As you've always done, you asked me to cast a critical eye over the script. And then, as now, I could never understand what it was about me that inspired you to create the character of an energetic, over-enthusiastic, bossy spinster. And look at the way you described her appearance. A striking woman dressed not too dramatically, but with a decided bias towards the barbaric. There's nothing barbaric about my dresses. They hide what needs to be hidden. And what is hidden is hideous. And your Madame Arcati doesn't like cocktail concoctions, whereas of course I adore them and I invent them. And as for that ridiculous affectation that she could smell the ghosts, admittedly, she does have what you might refer to as my natural exuberance, or what Owen refers to as a cavalier attitude towards all fragile and inanimate objects. It's always been my nature to throw just as much of myself into the making of a steak and kidney pudding as into my latest novel or play or script. I don't know what lazy means. As Jane Austen put it, I was not born to sit still and do nothing. And like you, I think work is just as much fun as fun. I do understand, dear, why you've chosen this moment in time to resurrect your most successful play. Like me, you've fallen out of fashion because of all those angry young men that have taken over your West End. I understand why some of them are so angry, but it does make me wonder, where are all the angry young women? I don't think anything you've ever written has been done out of anger. Sentimentality, heaps of it. Patriotism, well, certainly. I know you took it rather personally, dear, when the Luftwaffe bombed your London flat and office. But just think, if they hadn't, you wouldn't have taken yourself off to Port Merion for a holiday, which of course is where you wrote Blithe Spirit. In 6 days, as I recall. You always were a prodigy. But I know you found it hard to come to terms with what's happened to your reputation in recent years. And I do find it unfathomable that while I have been created a commander of the most excellent order of the British Empire, you have still not had the knighthood which you so richly deserve. You hide your hurt well, but I do understand what you mean when you say the palace should only have one queen. I do think you were perfectly right to take yourself off to the bright lights of Las Vegas and sell them your dapper, witty Englishman persona. They like a good commodity, the Americans. How odd that you and I should both become commodities that they love so well. It's no bad thing to have to reinvent yourself every now and again. I've done it so many times in my life, it's almost second nature to me now. Before I barely reached the age of reason, I had transformed myself from Winifred Ashton, art student and French teacher, to Diana Curtis, actress. I never got over the horror of rehearsals, although Diana Curtis had a photographic memory. She rather liked all the trappings and trimmings of theatrical digs, although she was not amused when she turned up in Brighton one Sunday afternoon to find 2 drunken women had overtaken her rooms. I must admit, though, when war came in 1914, I was ready to abandon the boards and take up arms, which in my case meant dustpans, saucepans and bedpans. Armed with these domestic weapons, I served those who served, and worked myself into a frazzle for 3 years and had a sort of a nervous breakdown, which is why I've always had sympathy for your mental anguish whenever you've had a failure. Remember dear Elsie, my first secretary? Well, it was her idea for me to move my career from stage to page. So I decided to launch my literary career as part of my recovery by writing a novel about forbidden love in a girls' school. Well, you know as well as I do the importance of courting controversy in your early work, just as you did with The Vortex. But while I was at school in Germany that I first became aware of Schwärmerei. Schwärmerei, the passionate and rapturous worship of a teacher by a pupil. I had it for my teacher, Fraulein Henschel. In America it's called a crush. In England we call it being keen on someone. But I was not keen on it. Nor have I been keen on being keen on anyone ever since. And that is one thing I'm afraid of. I created the fictional character of Claire Hartill, a woman who adores power and adoration and the exercise of that power, and eventually drives her once favourite pupil to suicide. One thinks of her like one of those more venomous, gruesome creatures, like the mousing cat or the vampire. But I never let people forget the beauty and attractiveness of her. She was a fascinating, detestable woman. I thought my Regiment of Women might cause a bit of a stir, so I thought I'd better give myself a new name to ward off the storm. Now, a friend said I should have something memorable, like Westminster Abbey. I couldn't really plump for Paul Cathedral. Martin Fields wasn't bad. So I decided to plump for Clemence Dane. Which is how everyone's come to know me ever since. Of course, you are the only one I still allow to call me Winnie. I know a lot of my friends refer to me as Moby Dane. Because I love the sea so much. Of course, once I'd had one success as Clemence Dane, before you knew it I had a second, so I was rather stuck with the name. Which is no bad thing, given that my first stage play was almost controversial as yours. My mother died giving birth to my brother Gerald, and eventually my father married one of her sisters. But the ceremony had to take place in America, as then it was illegal for a woman to marry her brother-in-law. So that got me thinking about all the many flaws in the divorce law. Did you know, in the 1920s, it was impossible for a woman to marry her husband if he was insane, or drunk, or in prison? So I said, let's just imagine it's the 1930s, and a woman can divorce her husband if he's insane, and a woman does just that. But then it all backfires on her when he turns up, cured, but with no idea he's divorced. Well, I grant you, It's not the happiest premise for a play, but that's the awful thing about insanity. It upsets everything. Much to my surprise, a bill of divorcement was a huge success. Even George Bernard Shaw was moved to declare, "I am fortunate that I have seen such a star rise before I die in the desert." Actually, the dear chap didn't die in the desert. He died after falling out of a plum tree. Which I thought was rather unfortunate, given that he was a vegetarian. Do you remember, when I came to stay with you in Jamaica, I told you that Shaw had objected to the manner in which I described the death of Christopher Marlowe? I just wanted to show that it was possible for me to have murdered Christopher Marlowe in the manner in which I depicted. I didn't mean to put everybody off their crabs by pretending to stick the fork in my neck. Your Jamaican cocktails have a lot to answer for. I hold them entirely responsible for the gay abandon with which I went for a swim in your pool. Admittedly, I do strip awkward, but I loved being able to abandon all vestige of clothing and stretch out on your lino. I am sorry Graham found me like that. Well, like most things in life, you can blame my penchant for pools on Hollywood. I mean, what is one to do when you're given an enormous apartment in Santa Monica with a pool that's big enough to accommodate Moby Dick, never mind Moby Dane? I've never been a Hollywood type, so it was no surprise, it was a huge surprise that I found myself in such a place, and so often. But that's the Hitchcock effect for you. I suppose I should be glad I encountered him in his early years before he started making films about deranged birds and young men obsessed with their dead mothers. Hitchcock turned my detective novel, Enter Sir John, into a film called Murder. Diana Baring, rep actress, is accused of killing a friend. When she's found guilty, a fellow actor sets out to track down the real killer, who turns out to be a cross-dressing circus performer who was Diana's fiancé. He killed the victim to ensure that she did not tell Diana that he was biracial. As Hitchcock said, it was an interesting film, quite successful in London, but too sophisticated for the provinces. Of course, it did start producers beating a path to my door. One studio wanted me to write the script for Hitchcock's Rebecca, but Alfred overruled that. And they had wanted the divine Garbo to star in it, but she insisted on doing Anna Karenina instead. So they drafted me in to co-write it for her. They never knew what to make of me in Hollywood. They couldn't decide if I was a complete fool or someone with ideas, but they tended to lean towards the former. When I first went there in 1933, I was booked into the Beverly Hills Hotel. Admittedly, it wasn't all we'd hoped for, but I never understood why some people found it so amusing. I was told that audiences were in stitches when Prince Charlie has to dress up as a woman to escape the British. And the noble Flora MacDonald says, "Your Royal Highness, I beg you not to tear your dress in two. You'll be needing it again when you land." Perfectly sensible advice, especially in this predicament. But then I've always been told I'm an optimist. Well, so I am, if it means refusing to have your faith shaken when the game doesn't go your way all the time. Perhaps that's because having lived through not one, but 2 world wars, I know there's nothing that cannot be overcome. Apart from death, and you and I have faced that enough times. How often did we all huddle here together during the Blitz? That worst night was the 10th of May 1941, by the light of a full moon. 1,400 people killed, 10,000 buildings destroyed. One of them was St. Clemence Dane's church. I tried not to take that personally. Oranges and lemons, said the bells of St. Clements. But they didn't speak again for nearly 20 years after that. And a flying bomb fell on Berkeley Square and silenced the nightingales that once sang there. It never ceased to astonish me that this ramshackle building, right in the heart of Covent Garden, wasn't flattened and me with it. But I preferred to stay here and face the consequences rather than be forced to take shelter. It was so maddening that my friends were all doing real war work when I couldn't. And that's why I took that weekend job as a cook at Bow Street Police Station. I must admit, coming home after frying 53 eggs and 10 pounds of bacon, I stank to high heaven. But I felt so much better. And I felt even better when the BBC asked me to do lectures to the colonies on the radio. It was my job to reassure them that London was still standing. I was particularly proud of the shelter book, for use in tubes, shelters, cellars and basements during wartime. It included games to drown out the bombs, recipes for barley water and facial cleanser, and advice on how to get the children to bed. I was rather saddened that it didn't reach its intended audience because the warehouse where the copies were stored was destroyed. I tried not to take that personally. I was most honoured, though, when the Minister of Food asked me to give lectures around Britain about how to make the best use of freely available food. Out I went into the hedgerows and filled my bowls with herbs and edible grasses. Unfortunately, I forgot to mention that what grew amongst the edible grasses was not fit for public consumption. We had to issue a formal apology. Still, at least it took my mind off the danger raining down on our heads day and night. My view was one of fatalism, that survival was largely out of our hands. The sirens wailed, the aircraft hummed, the bombs whistled and roared, the glass shattered, the fires raged. There was nothing we could do. It's strange, I was actually more afraid during the Zeppelin raids in World War I. Perhaps that's because we weren't used to bombs being dropped on us from above, especially from aircraft that looked like giant balloons. When they first came along, people would run out in the streets to look at them. D.H. Lawrence described the sky then as looking like a war in heaven. How he couldn't get over the fact that the moon was no longer queen of the sky, and that the Zeppelins, golden like the moon, had taken control of the sky, and the stars came out of the bursting shells. Those stars fell all along the Thames, on the warehouses, markets, theatres and stations, and on the munitions factories where young women my age worked. Their face and hair stained yellow by the chemicals. They were nicknamed Canary Girls. They wore tags round their necks so they could be identified if the factory was destroyed. I heard some of those canaries scream one night when there was a huge explosion at the factory at Silvertown. I can still hear them sometimes. But it was not until this last war that I realised how much I loved our shabby little England. I think it's cured us of our British self-consciousness, and I think we're less snobbish as a result. It was a war which no one wanted, and it spelt ruin to all the little lives throughout Europe. But it was for all those little lives throughout Europe that we fought it, and no doubt would fight again, to preserve our shabby little England. England, our welcoming land, which has always offered new hope and life to those facing tyranny throughout the world, and which I pray will continue to do so. In the beginning, the people came to the island, trampled the sands, climbed the white cliffs to the downs. British and Norman and Roman people, Saxon and Dane. Then came refugees fleeing death, hunted Huguenots, Jews from Spain to the wise island. Drew sobbing breath in the easy air, smelt the May, sweet as a kiss on a summer's day, and wept and worshipped the land. They gave it their craft, their skill, their sweat. They spent their lives to make lovelier yet England, the welcoming land. Oh, with such pride, since the beginning, people have lived and died for the country of cornflower and briar rose, buttercup meadow and orchard rose. England, the people's England, the welcoming land. Dear Noel, my dearest Noel, it was most apt that you and I were here together on Victory Day. Do you remember? We went out into the streets where there were thousands of people cheering and singing, and then we joined more outside the gates of Buckingham Palace to cheer the King and the Queen. And I know you were thinking of your own lost war hero, your beloved Duke of Kent, the King's brother. And then the lights went on again in London after 6 long, dark years. But not for you. Not at that moment. But you and I and our family of friends, well, we found our way back to fun again. And we are a family, not a conventional Victorian family, but something better in many senses, because we chose each other. We came together and we stayed together because we wanted to be together. I think we're so much more fun than that Bloomsbury set. We laughed at everything and everybody, and we actually got things done. We didn't just talk about it, we did it. We are unafraid to reason, laugh and explore. I suppose I shouldn't mention it after all these years, but it might shock you to know that Joyce Grenfell thinks you are aggressive and snobby. But then she is a Christian Scientist, dear, so you shouldn't pay too much attention to someone who doesn't believe in penicillin. I do love it when we're all together, whether we're here or at the caravans in Sussex. You and Graham and Cole and Victor, Well, it's just like being in fairyland. I am sorry that there are still no toilets down at the caravan, and that depending on the nature of your needs, you must seek shelter in a shrub or go and use one of the neighbours' facilities. But we do have that gas-fired fridge that Mr. Selznick bought me. He always liked a good martini, and he said that you could never make a good martini without ice. It's perfectly true. Oh, and we've solved the goldfish problem. We found that they must have shade, so now they've got a huge erection covered in everlasting pee. My Tavistock said, it does remind me of being sent to stay with my 7 aunts in Tunbridge Wells when I was a child. They all used to sit around the breakfast table talking about politics, even though they never knew what they were talking about, but still. As you know, I abhor political and social apathy of any kind. And I'm sure it won't please you to know that recently I added my name to a list of playwrights who signed a public declaration stating that we would not allow our works to be performed in any South African theatre or any theatre in the world that operates a colour bar. It is not, as you might regard it, a sterile gesture. A public statement made on a point of principle taken by a large group of individuals can never be regarded as sterile. It is an avowal of political philosophy. I know you've always avoided aligning yourself with any political cause, and you frown on those of us that do. And I know that's the one thing we've never been able to agree on, or ever will. But I know we share one belief, and that is that I could no more bear to lose your friendship than you could lose mine. I think you're going to like this new painting I'm doing of you. Do you remember? You sat at the piano and bashed out 2 new melodies while I bashed away at the canvas. I am glad that you stuck doing your own paintings, although I don't understand why you insist on doing it in the nude when you're in Jamaica. I know it's the tropics, dear, but is it really unfair to inflict that on your housekeeper? I do wish you'd kept doing your sculptures as well. You should have applied yourself. I was quite happy to keep giving you lessons, except when you kept giggling every time I told you to waggle your tool a bit harder. That head of Diana that I gave you was my first success in clay. And of course, it's still my favourite, though I can hardly bear to look at it anymore. Diana Wynyard remains the freshest and most attractive creature I've ever met. When she came to play Charlotte Bronte for me, I thought she was the sweetest and most attractive girl I'd met for 20 years. So unspoilt and natural and intelligent. She posed for me one evening while I fashioned her face in clay. She sat there on the sofa, sitting upright, looking as though there was a lantern, and it shone from within. I have never seen anything so ravishingly beautiful in all my life. I asked her for this lock of hair. It's often been said of me that I have the wholesome vigour of the entire hockey team of a good girls' school. But it's the power to life, to cope with life, that is fading. The other night I had a vision that someone came to me to say goodbye, regretfully. It's odd how death seems to wipe away all the bitternesses. And I have bitterness towards none. And when my time comes, I will embrace it as I have everything in my life, and hug it in mine arm. And before I do, I'll throw a little farewell party for you and Dick and Victor. I'll get Olwen to lay on some crabs. I'll put on some lipstick, and I'll put on my purple scarf, and we'll have a wonderful evening again together. And then I shall leave the party first. Again. Fade out. Dissolve. Cut. I suppose I could come back and haunt you all. But I promise not to do it when Madame Arcati is summoning up the spirit. That wouldn't be fair, would it? But it might liven up that first act a bit. There! I think you're going to love this new portrait. It'll make a lovely companion to that bronze head I did of you. So don't forget, dear, do take my bust and hang it in the National Gallery where everyone can see it. They can be my memorials. Though somewhere in all this mess, there's a little epitaph that Clemence Dane wrote for Winifred Ashton. Jeers never ruffled her, she talked too loud. Naught ever muffled her, save her shroud. She meant so well, she talks so fast, she's put her foot in the grave at last. In ultimate hell, never sneer or doubt her. She's reforming the devil. It's quiet here without her. I can imagine a heaven where fear is not present. And I can imagine it being beautiful and peaceful. But I cannot imagine it as exciting. Give me the trials and changes of this mortal life. I like them, and I want more of them. I want to compare the feelings of 70, 80, and 90 with the feelings of 20, 30, and 40. If I really had a free hand, I'd like to broadcast on my 100th birthday and fly around the world. I'd like a West End theatre and the time and money to run it. I'd like a St. Bernard puppy and a really effective weed killer. I never want anything I do or say to be taken the wrong way. I'd like all the Duke Ellington records, or and some covers for the chairs. I want a frigid air. I want sympathy. I want the ending to Edwin Drood. That's all I think. Oh, I forgot. I've often wanted the moon.